Greetings, I'm Shad, and I have a passionate subject to talk about, which is sword pedantry. This is something I'm very familiar with because I think there is absolutely a place to be a bit pedantic about certain historical facts, but then we can clearly go too far to the point where we start to demand certain standards that are bizarre, unreasonable, and founded completely on bullcrap. Like the reasons why you should do X or not do Y, nonsense, and people kind of latch onto them as almost a means to exert their own intelligence and authority by being able to say, well, you should really do it this way, when it's not the case at all. There are common ones, even right now, that people are trying to perpetuate. And you might have figured out what some of those were by the cold open and by this beautiful display of weapons behind me. Isn't this just, mwah? This is like a work of art. I think it actually has more effort put into it than a lot of modern art pieces. And if you're going to judge art by what can cause an emotional reaction in people, this is legitimate art. My goodness. Don't you think so, Nate?
I mean, it definitely evokes a emotional response.
It is interesting because there are certain things that get repeated a lot that when people then contradict or do against, they actively cringe at for what?
I have a very valid reason why I cringe at that.
This one in particular, has some validity.
It does.
But not universally.
No.
If you don't have anything to lean it against,
no,
and you just need your hands free, it's a very functional thing you can do.
It's still going to make me cringe.
That's the thing, because it's the constant repeating that you should never do this that causes people to be like, what are you doing? But the reality is, right, the potential damage that can come to the sword is equivalent to doing this.
Actually, that's probably worse.
This is probably worse, okay? Why? Your hand is greasy, it has salts in it and everything like that.
And acids.
And acids. If you do not clean it, that area is going to rust really quickly.
And these marks here are just from me. Yep. I'm going to have to clean it. I didn't clean it last time. Just from me doing that.
And this is the reality of carbon steel. Carbon steel will rust, and fingerprints are particularly, potentially damaging.
They are.
But is there any complaints about it being on the ground?
No, actually, we do this at training all the time.
Because this is the interesting thing, right? The moisture in the ground is going to be less damaging to the potential rusting of the sword than to actually touching it.
Yes.
Even spitting on the blade like I did in the, right?
And another thing, that bothers me, and yet, that's how I clean my blades when I clean them with wet and dry.
You see? And there's another element to this where people will cringe because you're disrespecting the blade. I'll talk a bit more about that a little later, because you don't get to dictate what someone else does with their sword, okay?
That's true.
If you want to respect it, you can respect it however the way you want, all right? But I've literally met some people where never even, finger on the blade. It's like, don't ever touch it. And even touching it, right? Yes, it's potentially damaging. You know what you do afterwards?
Clean it.
Clean it. That's all we have to do. And it's not a problem. And, cleaning,
there is, I really feel like going and getting the WD-40.
Oiling it will protect it even more.
It will.
And you do proper cleaning afterwards. And yes, the most potential problem with stabbing in the ground is actually hitting rocks where it might dent it, because you can't predict where rocks are in the ground. But if you want to take the gamble and you think you're on soft ground where there's no rocks, go to town. And the idea that it's first rust, then people will say it will blunten the blade by stabbing it into the ground.
The ground is fairly soft.
Yeah, maybe the tiniest. To do it even once or a couple of times, the difference is going to be so negligible to not even notice in reality, right? You would blunten a sword more chopping a tatami mat, okay, that is coarse and resistant, than soft ground, easily. Now, if it's really hard ground, it might be different.
Well, if you're stabbing it into stone,
into rocky ground, right? And then, even if someone is aware of all this, right? I think it's no problem if they're not aware. Just say, all right, here are the pros and cons about doing that. But once they know, they can do whatever the friggin' hell they want.
Yeah, if it's their sword, then and they have certain rules around their sword, then that's fine. But if that's your sword and you pass to him, you'd be like, oh, you can throw it in the ground.
Exactly. If this was someone else's sword, right? I would be respecting it as I don't know what conditions they have about their own sword maintenance and care, and so I wouldn't do this with someone else's sword.
No, but your own blade.
But if it's my sword, I can do what the freaking hell I want with it. I can snap it in two and throw it in the trash if I want it. It's mine. I have caveats if it was a historical replica with actual greater significance.
Yes.
But if it's just something that you bought online and it was made for you and it's yours or whatever, and it's a money thing, it's yours. Do what you want.
Thanks for visiting the Shadlands, the place to find quick and easy to watch sword-related content. This video was a supercut or clip from a larger Shadiversity video. If you'd like to see the full-length video, please click on the provided links, and I hope to see you in the future.